The moment the single mother stood beside the small cafe table, holding her child's hand and staring at a plate of fries that did not belong to her, the world seemed to pause. Rain streaked down the glass windows behind her, the kind of rain that felt heavy with unshed tears. Her clothes were clean but worn thin by too many washes, and her eyes carried a quiet desperation she had learned to hide. No one in that cafe noticed her struggle except the men she was about to speak to, a man whose life, wealth, and power were beyond anything she could imagine. And with one simple, humble question, her fate was about to change forever. Before we go deeper into this story, take a moment to pause. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of simple human compassion to change lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. She had not planned to ask anyone for anything that day. Pride had been the last thing she owned, and even that was crumbling. The cafe was warm, glowing with soft yellow lights and the comforting smell of fried potatoes and coffee. It was supposed to be a place of rest, but for her it felt like a battlefield. Her little daughter, barely 6 years old, had been unusually quiet all morning. Hunger does that to children, it steals their energy and replaces it with a tired obedience that breaks a mother's heart. The woman had counted her money 3 times before entering the cafe. It was just enough for a single cup of tea, nothing more. She told herself that sitting inside, even without food, would give her child a moment of warmth. Outside, the city felt cruel and endless, full of people rushing past without seeing her. Inside, at least, there was a chair. They sat at a corner table, her daughter swinging her legs gently beneath the chair, eyes wandering across the room. The child noticed everything, the laughter of other families, the clinking of cutlery, and especially the fries. Golden, crispy, piled generously on white plates. The smell filled the air, and the child's gaze lingered longer than it should have. The mother pretended not to notice at first, staring into her cup of tea as if it held answers. But then her daughter tugged her sleeve gently. Small fingers, cold from the rain, wrapped around her hand. The mother looked down and saw the familiar look in her child's eyes, the one that asked without words. It was the look that made her chest ache with guilt. She had promised a better life. She had promised stability. And yet here they were. Across the cafe sat a man alone. He wore a simple coat, nothing flashy, and his hair was slightly unkempt, as if he had stopped caring about appearances long ago. His plate was full, barely touched. He looked tired, not the kind of tired that comes from hard labor, but the kind that comes from carrying invisible burdens. His eyes were focused somewhere far away, lost in thoughts that seemed heavier than the rain outside. The mother hesitated. Every instinct told her to stay silent, to protect what little dignity she had left. But her daughter's grip tightened, and hunger won over pride. Slowly, almost apologetically, she stood up and walked toward the man's table. Her steps felt heavy, as though the entire cafe was watching, even though no one was. When she reached him, she stopped for a moment, gathering courage. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper, trembling with shame and hope mixed together. She asked if they could share his fries. Not all of them. Just a few. Enough to quiet a child's hunger. The man looked up, surprised, as if pulled back from another world. His eyes moved from the woman's face to the small child behind her, clutching her mother's coat. In that instant, something shifted inside him. Memories he had buried deep resurfaced, memories of a childhood where hunger had also been a frequent visitor, where his own mother had smiled through hardship so he would not feel afraid. Without hesitation, he nodded and pushed the plate toward them. He even stood up, pulling out a chair for the child. The mother's eyes filled with tears, though she tried to hide them. Gratitude washed over her so strongly it felt like relief and pain all at once. They sat together, not as strangers, but as two people briefly sharing the same fragile moment in life. The man ordered more food, quietly insisting, and the mother tried to refuse at first. But her daughter was already smiling, already reaching for the fries with a joy so pure it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. The mother gave in, her resistance melting under the weight of her child's happiness. What she did not know was that the men she was sitting with owned buildings taller than anything she had ever seen, companies that employed thousands, and a bank account that could solve her problems 100 times over. To her, he was just a tired man with kind eyes. And to him, she was a reminder of everything money could not buy. As they ate, he listened. He listened as she spoke about her life, not in dramatic detail, but in small pieces that revealed everything. A husband lost to illness. Jobs that came and went. Long nights worrying about rent, school fees, and the future. She never asked him for help beyond that plate of fries. She never complained. She simply shared her story as if it were an old, familiar ache she had learned to live with. The man felt something tighten in his chest. For years, he had been surrounded by people who wanted something from him: investors, advisors, distant relatives. They all spoke loudly, confidently, always asking. This woman asked for almost nothing, yet she carried more strength than any boardroom he had ever sat in. When they finished eating, the mother thanked him again and again, her words sincere and unpolished. She stood up, ready to leave, already preparing herself to step back into the rain. But the man was not done. He asked her about her dreams, about what she would do if life had been kinder. She hesitated, then spoke softly about wanting to open a small bakery someday, a place where her daughter could do homework in the corner while she worked. It was a simple dream, fragile and beautiful. The man smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. He wrote something on a piece of paper and handed it to her. It was his contact information, though she did not realize its significance. He told her to call him if she ever needed work or advice. She nodded, thanking him once more, and left, holding her daughter's hand tightly as they disappeared into the gray afternoon. Days passed, then weeks. The memory of that cafe lingered in the man's mind like an unfinished sentence. He found himself thinking about the woman and her child during meetings, during late-night walks through his penthouse apartment that felt too empty. Eventually, he asked his team to look into her situation discreetly, using only the information he had learned from her. What they found shook him. She was not lazy. She was not irresponsible. She was doing everything right and still barely surviving. That realization stirred something deep within him. He decided to act, not as a billionaire handing out charity, but as a human being offering opportunity.